thing I would ask is that you please silence your cell phones if you have them with you, so that we don't have interruptions. As we prepared for today, I've had several of you stop me during the last couple of weeks and say, I'm so excited about this because I want to know about the mayor. I don't know anything about him. So I welcome you on two levels. First of all, I'm going to ask you just a few sort of very personal questions so you can know a little bit about him as a person, and then we're going to get right down to business because I have a ton of questions, thanks to you, to ask him today. Our mayor has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Gettysburg College. He has a master's degree in Public Administration from the American University. He is married to Veronica, who immigrated to the United States from Peru in 2005. His military experience is with the New Hampshire Army National Guard. And he enlisted, if I have this right, you enlisted at 35?
Nailed it. 35 years old.
Why did you wait till 35?
Is that one of your questions?
That's a fun one.
Is that just a fun one? Or?
Yeah, no,
well, you got me all prepped now. I'm nervous. I'm expecting some real hard hitting.
Oh, it's going to come.
Yeah, so I think, who was here in 2023 when I was here for the debate? Okay, all right. So some of you are a little bit familiar with my background, but so I got sober in 2010, so I stopped drinking in 2010. I had a number of arrests in my background, and I've been pretty open and honest about my own struggles with alcoholism. But so as a result of those arrests, I was never able to join the military. I had continued to try repeatedly to get in, and they kept looking at my background and said, look, we appreciate you wanting to join the armed services, but we have certain regulations that we have to follow. But I kept trying repeatedly for 10 years. And finally, I got outside of that window that they look at where, of course, they still take it into... Is that better? Oh, you want me to stand? Oh, okay. Okay. Hi, in the back. All right, we got you. So I continued to try repeatedly to get into the service. I got outside of that 10-year window that they really look at. They certainly take it into account, but it's not as important if you've shown that you've made progress in that 10 years. So I finally got in. So in 2019, I started the process again to try and get into the Army National Guard. I had a good job at the time, so I didn't want to go active duty per se. I wanted to fulfill my responsibility through the National Guard route. So in 2020, 3 weeks before my 35th birthday, because I would have needed another waiver if I had turned 35 because of an age waiver. 3 weeks before my 35th birthday, I signed up, and then a month later, I was at Fort Jackson in South Carolina to begin basic combat training, and then did officer candidate school immediately following that, accelerated officer candidate school. So they fit the 12. See, I'm going to go way over. You're going to bring that hammer down on me.
I know. Finish your sentence, and it's my turn.
All right, I got that. So, and then I went to officer candidate school right after that, and then I went to infantry basic officer leadership course after that. So I'm an infantry officer by trade here in the Army National Guard.
Thank you.
There it is.
Now, as many of you know, because you've been to forums where we've talked about generations X, Y, and Z, Y being millennials, I'd like you to meet a millennial. Now, Jay, most millennials are allergic to institutions, and you're not. Would you make a quick comment about that?
To me, so I've worn like 4 different hats. See, you can't ask a politician to nail something in like a minute. I've worn like 4 different hats in my professional career. I worked on the policy side for Mayor Ginta at the time, if folks were around in Manchester then, but in 2006 I worked for Mayor Ginta, and then I worked for him when he was a congressman, so I've done the policy side. I worked on the political side and worked on a couple campaigns. I worked for 2 different nonprofits, one here in Manchester, Catholic Charities New Hampshire, I'm sure you're all familiar with, but I also worked for a nonprofit that helped people with addiction-related issues, and that was more of a nationwide nonprofit, and then I served in the Army as well, and now I'm mayor. So the one constant through line in that is public service. So I believe in our institutions, I believe in making them work and function better, more efficiently, but I do believe in our institutions.
Thank you. Governor Sununu nominated you to serve on the State Boxing and Wrestling Commission. How did that happen?
Yeah, so when I love to read, and I had read this quote one time that had said, you should do something that scares the heck out of you every single day. So I thought that was interesting.
Ooh.
So I always loved boxing when I was growing up because of the discipline that's associated with it. Not out of any bloodlust or anything, but I loved the discipline. I loved the sweet science. And so when I got into college, I said I'd like to try this out. So I joined the boxing program at Gettysburg College, and I boxed for 3 years. Yeah, so I've always loved it. I came right before like the UFC and mixed martial arts and that, so I'm a purist from the boxing sense. So when Governor Sununu, obviously his term is up as of yesterday, but in the fall they were looking to fill a bunch of commissions, and the gentleman that was doing the recruiting for those commissions called me and said, hey, I know you love boxing, would you want to be on the commission? And I said, where do I sign? Yes, I want to be on that commission.
So have you ever knocked anybody out?
Oh, can I plead the fifth?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to talk about that? I have, so when I was in college, I did have 4 amateur boxing matches. So we only boxed against other military academies. So I went to West Point, I went to the Naval Academy, I went to Virginia Military Institute, and had a ball. Yeah, it was a hoot.
All right, you've been
Much like a Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, if you guys ever watch those.
Yeah, we're not going to do that today. After this year as mayor, the most important question to ask you is your wife still speaking to you?
She is unbelievably supportive. So, well, funny story. So I told her that I wanted to run for mayor, and so she's from Peru, as you mentioned. And 4 of the last 5 presidents in Peru ended up in jail. So she said to me, it was kind of tongue in cheek, but she said, you're gonna get in trouble, you're gonna go to jail. And I said, look, I'm gonna hide the corruption a lot better than they do in Peru. We're gonna be just fine. And she's been unbelievably supportive. It's difficult though, they talk about it almost like she's almost a widow in some way with all the work that goes on because I'm out of the house a lot. I have weekend events, and yeah, it makes it really difficult. But she knows that I love public service. She knows that I love being involved, and she's unbelievably supportive.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to start timing you.
Okay.
Okay.
Get ready. Put on my boxing trunks.
Okay. This is the toughest and most important concern we're going to ask you about first. The number one question of our residents has been a concern here for years. And as of today, no one in city government has actually acted on this.
Sounds like a challenge.
Here it comes. There's only one road in and out of the RiverWoods Manchester campus, and that is Countryside Boulevard, which empties into Hackett Hill Road. As you look out at this audience, you are looking at residents who could be your parents.
Tim's going to leave. So that is our director of Department of Public Works in the city of Manchester, and I knew this question was coming.
Anyway, as you look at this audience, these people could be either your parents or your grandparents. By the very nature of our ages and our needs, there are ambulances, rescue vehicles, and a constant stream of suppliers in and out of our campus on a daily basis. The number of challenges to our safety and other physical needs include, but are not limited to, fire, fallen trees, a severe accident, winter road conditions, mudslides, etc. We share this challenge with somewhere around 1,000 residents on Countryside Boulevard. I've recently discovered that we're not the only Manchester residents facing this issue. On the east side, off Wellington Road, there's only one entrance exit onto Courier Drive and onto Edward J. Roy Drive, even though there's no retirement campus on either of those roads. If I know of these 3 situations, I'm guessing there might be more. So here are the questions in general. How has this happened?
It's multiple. This is a multiple choice.
Yeah.
Multiple part question.
I told you it was long. Exactly where are we now? Are there any plans or actions under consideration or already set into motion? If not, why not? Where are the checks and balances? And what have you done in the past year? Once again, we're asking for real answers and real plans.
Yeah. So 2 things on this question, because I remember I got this the last time around, and I remember another section or part of this question before was a bus route. getting it
That's
up here.
we'll come
right?
to that later.
Okay, well, let me handle that in two parts just because it's a transportation. Am I allowed to do that?
Okay.
You're the moderator. You can do
Yeah.
whatever you want.
I'd
right?
like you to wait on that part
Okay,
because I
all right.
have some information on
So
that.
there's a secondary piece to this, but so we're about to go into the budget process now. So prior to the holiday break, I had sent out a directive to all of our department heads, and I listed several things that I was looking for by the middle of this month. One was all of my budget requests. As soon as we get the tax cap, which should be coming next week, so we know the bounds that we have to operate within, then we're going to set up meetings with all of our department heads to talk about the finance of things like this. Like where does it come in the prioritization factor of the level of importance, which obviously this is a great need when you have 1,000 residents who are being impacted by something like this. And then what is the balancing act of the cost prohibitive nature of it? So these are the conversations that Tim and I will be having in 10 days. So I had already had this thought in my mind because I remember how important this question was the last time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we will come back to transportation,
Okay.
I promise. Now, the next question has multiple parts. So I would appreciate it if you could be succinct. Here we go. Okay, in October 20...
I told you. I told Tim he had to come up because this was going to be brutal.
In 2023, in October, as you were running for your office, you came to RiverWoods to campaign. You talked passionately about the need of the city of Manchester to address the homeless situation more directly. Several printed reports indicate that the number of homeless veterans in the nation has dropped significantly since 2009. However, according to HUD, the U.S. homeless population has increased by more than 18% in 2024, driven by high housing costs, natural disasters, a spike in migration to larger cities, and the closing of shelters and an increase in migrants in shelters that are still open. HUD also suggests that there appears to be an increase in homeless children, and more particularly adults over 65, which is why we're asking the question. These numbers do not include people who are counted who stay with families and friends. I have multiple questions. Here's the first one. What has happened to the homeless in Manchester during your first year in administration? What specific plans do you have going forward? In short, are we making a difference, and are we actually progressing to find solutions to this massive problem?
Yes. So when I came here, a year and a half ago now, I had talked about the fact that homelessness should be rare, brief, and one time. And that in order to address this, we have to do this in a comprehensive way. So that includes things like enforcement of our ordinances and our laws. That includes addressing the underlying drivers of homelessness, whether it's addiction, mental health, lack of a job, things of that nature. And then also on the affordable housing side, there is a direct correlation between the lack of affordable housing or the increase in costs in housing and the number of homeless individuals that you have within the community. So that's exactly what we've done in the last years. We've implemented that comprehensive response. So in the first 12 months, we launched and implemented 15 different initiatives to address homelessness. So, and I can go through all 15,
Go.
but okay.
No.
So, well, I'll just take a couple piece by piece because this is important. So, on the enforcement front, so in the summer of last year, the Supreme Court ruled that cities, municipalities, states could have more or have the ability to enforce their own ordinances without the Supreme Court stepping in. So, one of the things we did was we banned camping in the city of Manchester. We also we eliminated one program in the city of Manchester that I didn't feel that was up to snuff, that wasn't getting the job done. So we took that $500,000 from that program and we transferred it to the police department so that they could do hotspot patrols in our parks and in our downtown areas. So in the 6 months of operation from July 12th to the end of the year, they conducted over 130 arrests and issued over 480 citations. So that's on the enforcement side. So if you go downtown now, I think you're going to see a much different location or area than you may have seen in the past. Through now addressing underlying drivers of homelessness, through the engagement center Beach Street shelter that we have. In the 6 months that we've now been putting out monthly reports on the goings-on at the engagement center, over 800 unhoused individuals, among the unhoused individuals within our community, over 800 provider connections have been made through the engagement center. So getting people connected to services. Over 35 people, nearly 40 at this point, nearly 40 people have received housing through the engagement center. So they worked to get housed, to address those underlying drivers, get connected to housing. Over 10 people have gotten jobs. Over 10 people have gotten into rehab or detoxes. Over 30 individuals have gotten driver's licenses, so security cards, birth certificates, and then one last piece on the housing. On the housing side, we sold 15 parcels of property in the city of Manchester that had been vacant for years. We took those properties, they weren't collecting any taxes, they were just sitting there. And then we sold them. We deemed them surplus, we sold them. We raised $1.13 million through the sale of those properties, transferred that money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund so that now we can make expenditures out of that to create more affordable housing. We're also undertaking the first zoning rewrite in the city of Manchester in 23 years, only the fourth time that the city will rewrite its zoning ordinances in the entire history of our city. But the whole thrust of that is to bring more affordable housing and more housing into the city of Manchester. One last piece. We also launched an initiative in September to effectively end veterans' homelessness in the city of Manchester. So since the beginning of that in September, I got the latest numbers now, we have housed 28 veterans that were previously unhoused, and now they have housing either within the city of Manchester or within the state of New Hampshire. But we're working on this problem as well. You mentioned seniors. So when I think of this challenge, I think we can't look at the overall 30,000 foot level of homelessness. We have to break it down into distinct groups because there are very real and different challenges within each of these groups. Children, you're going to have to address homelessness differently than you are seniors, right? Veterans, you can address differently than someone with an SUD or an OUD or a mental health issue. So what I want to do is I want to break these down into manageable bite-sized pieces like we did with veterans and start making real progress within these different groups.
Thank you. Is there a typical profile for a homeless person in Manchester?
From a demographic standpoint, yeah, typically it's going to be between 18 and 45 white male.
Okay.
I believe that was the last demographic report that I looked at.
Do you think that housing affordability might be getting worse? And what exactly is the definition of affordable housing? And how is the struggle to build more affordable housing affecting all of us?
60% of AMI. Okay. So $1,100 to $1,400 a month is roughly what you would classify as affordable housing.
And do you think that that would involve having two people in that household working?
It's primarily, yeah. So $1,100 to $1,400 a month. So the challenge with affordable housing is that
keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
The challenge with affordable housing is that affordable housing is affordable for the tenant. It is entirely unaffordable to build. It is a very expensive proposition to build affordable housing, especially when you're in the marketplace that we have right now with increased costs, increased inflation. It costs more money to construct a building. We have a unit in this city that is about 120, or we have a building that's going to be constructed, about 125 units, costs about $47 million to build.
Okay. Where are the safe places for the unhoused population of Manchester to go during extreme weather?
Yep. So on the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in the November meeting, we made our final appropriation for all of the ARPA dollars that we have in the city. Included in that appropriation was, I think it was $437,000, I believe, if I remember correctly, to keep the engagement center open from December 1 through the end of March 31st for that fatality prevention during the winter months. We also have Families in Transition, there's Waypoint, there's the Brook Street Shelter. There are plenty of places to go if folks need them.
Thank you. Are tents being banned downtown?
Yes.
And is sleeping in public being banned?
Yes, well, we've banned camping in the city of Manchester.
Okay. Yes. How much do the refugees contribute to the homeless situation here?
Well, it doesn't fit the demographic. I mean, there are, from a raw numbers standpoint, anytime you are adding people in your community, it's going to put stressors on the services that the city provides. So whether that's through the health department, whether that's through the school department. So anytime you're bringing in individuals who may need greater assistance, that is going to be a challenge for the services that we provide in the city of Manchester.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, next question. Many of us here still drive.
I would add just one thing to that, though. So the immigrant and refugee population in the city of Manchester is comprised of individuals who want to work extraordinarily hard. Like these folks that are coming here they primarily have jobs. They are living within the city. They are working hard. If you're on Elm Street right now, the Congolese restaurants bookend either end of Elm Street. So now the challenge that we run into from a city perspective is that there are, like I said before, there are challenges. Anytime you're bringing in 100, 200 individuals within a community, that's going to hurt our ability to provide affordable housing to others who need it. That's going to impact our hospitals. That's going to impact our schools. So there's got to be a balance to all of this. We always want to make sure that we are a welcoming, inviting city, but at the same time, we have to make sure we're taking care of our citizens as well. And when the groups that are coming in and doing the refugee placement, what I have said is that you have to look at other places as well. Nashua, Concord, Rochester.
Okay, next question. We must move on. Many of us still drive, and we're concerned about the traffic patterns at the Amoskeag Bridge Circle, or some people call it a rotary, and the off and on
Tim
ramps.
ran away.
What?
Tim, my director, ran away.
Oh. And the off and on ramps at Highway 293.
Yeah.
What's the latest plan, and will the upgrades to Exit 7 continue to provide convenient access to the Amoskeag Bridge to and from Front Street?
Yeah, absolutely. So the changes that need to occur at Exit 6 and 7, those are included in the 10-year master plan for the state. Did anybody follow what was going on with United Therapeutics in Hackett Hill over the last several months? Yeah, so we had been working with United Therapeutics to develop up on Hackett Hill, and they had put in a memorandum of understanding that they were going to purchase that area. We were going to use that as rationale for us to go to the state and say, look, I recognize this is on the 10-year plan, but let's put this on the 1 to 3 year part of the 10-year plan. It's almost like a chicken or the egg kind of thing. We have to demonstrate that we're going to develop up there to make a difference in that area. That's really what I would love to be able to show, that we are here, we are developing this, now we need the state's help to come in and make these upgrades.
Okay, in addition to this, and we mentioned this when you were here running for mayor. Oh, sorry. In addition to this, when you were running for mayor, we mentioned this. Auto insurance premiums, according to insurance companies, are high in our zip code, that's 03102, due to a high rate of auto accidents and auto crimes. Are you aware of this, and how can this be addressed?
I am aware, because I remember the question from the last time. Did you go back and watch the footage? Or?
No, I kept
You got
the
a document in there? That yes, no, I am aware of it. From a local level, I think the ability that I would have on that is to make sure that the roads are safe, to make sure that there aren't potholes, to make sure that we have proper guardrails, to make sure that we're working with Department of Transportation to ensure that the roads are well maintained and well kept. As it comes to insurance policy, I mean, we could always reach out on behalf potentially to insurance companies if there were like legitimate claims of malfeasance or things that are, if people are being targeted, if there's discrimination involved from a protected class like seniors are, something like that. A lot of times that kind of stuff is casework for federal offices, but my office would be more than happy to take a look at it.
Okay. Now, before I ask the next question, I want you to know something important about the people in this room. Would everyone in this room who voted in the November election raise your hand?
Hey, that's what I love to see.
Thank you. Now, keeping that in mind, RiverWoods houses an active voter population. Approximately 90% of our residents in independent living, which is about 150 residents, vote regularly. However, voter turnout in Ward 12, this ward, is noticeably lower than other wards in the city. What do you think accounts for those low numbers?
I'm not sure if I could place a motive on it. What I would say is that I think it's incumbent upon elected officials to do things like this. You've got to give people a reason to be excited to go out and vote. We don't, I mean, I'm sure, how many people do we think are in here? 100 and
In
what?
this room right now, probably about 90.
90? All right, when I post this on Facebook, it's going to be 1,000 people showed up. But I think that it's incumbent upon us as elected officials to come to you and talk to you about the things that we are doing, make you excited, make you engaged, make you want to be a part of the process. I think voter apathy is partly the response of, or a result of elected officials not doing their jobs and coming to you and talking to you about what's going on. So I mean,
yeah, and I think most of you, if you're reading the paper, know that our mayor is getting ready to start his second round of town halls. And we appreciate that very much, that you're willing to come to talk to us.
Yeah, I think it's important. And I think one of the most important things is if you can disagree with somebody, But if you hear them out and they listen, this is the way I think about it. Let's say somebody in the audience thinks that the mayor's a total jerk. He didn't do anything. He said all these terrible things today. But if I come before you and I explain where I'm coming from, you understand that it's coming from a good place and not a malicious place. That while we may disagree, it's not because we're just arriving at different conclusions to an issue. And I think that people are more than willing to give you the benefit of the doubt if they know you're coming from a good place. So I'm always happy to come and talk to folks. I think one of the things that drives down participation in a way is the ugly nature of, or the coarse discord that we have among our politics today. And to me, it's gross. Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, can I tell you the proudest moment I had on
Yes.
the campaign
Please.
last year?
Please.
So after she beat me up here in RiverWoods, her son Scott did our debate at the Chamber of Commerce, it was the Chamber of Commerce debate at St. Anselm's College.
2 days later.
2 days later. So Scott closed the debate that afternoon and said something to he was thanking all of the sponsors that had sponsored the entire event. And he said, but this, so he said, like, thank you to Bellwether Credit Union, but this debate might as well have been sponsored by the Hallmark Channel because of how well Kevin and I got along together. So we disagreed, and on issues we disagreed, vehemently, but it was never personal. We just arrived at different conclusions. And I was more proud of that, I think, than anything else on the campaign was how we ran the campaign.
And that evening, as he began and Scott introduced him, I didn't know this till days later, he said, I sure hope your questions aren't as hard as the ones your mother asked me to. Okay. What are the plans for the property on Hackett Hill Road just south of Countryside Boulevard? We understand that the property might be owned by UNH and that the latest business purchase has fallen through. Do you see that as an industrial site? What kind of group or groups would you like to attract to that property and continuing in Manchester?
Yeah, so for those who were following along with this towards the end of the summer, early fall of last year, we had been working with United Therapeutics, which is doing $50 million worth of work in the Mill Yard, doing regenerative medicine, so biofabrication, creating manufacturing lungs and kidneys in the Mill Yard. It is an incredible organization that is working in the Mill Yard. And they were looking to expand in the city and create more, or create a bigger footprint in the city of Manchester. So we had looked at Hackett Hill as that opportunity. We had entered into an MOU with them to purchase that property. Ultimately, it didn't come to fruition. Right now, it is zoned as an industrial area where we would do that kind of manufacturing work. And previously, UNH had looked there as well. There were times where it was owned by real estate developers too. So I think the city really has to have a conversation now about what do we want to see up in that area. So let's say you wanted to do some kind of mixed use where you had housing, where you had like a little neighborhood. You had housing, you had like a laundromat or CVS, like things of that nature, and create like your almost little town within a town. But we as a city have to determine what is the best path forward. So we'll be coming back to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to give an update. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you supply information on the combined sewage overflow project, east and west sides?
Yeah. Yes, I can. So the city of Manchester entered into a consent decree in the year 2020. And basically what it said was, the city of Manchester was dumping $280 million worth of, or $280 million gallons worth of raw sewage into the Merrimack River every year. We have 400 miles of sewage pipes in the city of Manchester. About 100 of those 400 miles are all over 100 years old. So you're talking about an infrastructure that was built for a city that was 25% of the population that it was now, totally outdated. So anytime it rains in the city, not a 100-year flood, a 100-year storm, anytime it rains, we have houses. I visited one on throughout the city, but the one I visited was on the east side of the city. Anytime it rains, they have sewage that backs up into their basements. Horrific. Right, so the CSO project that is going through, right, or that they're working on starting to create is, I see this is where Tim would be great. He's got all the specifics on it, but it's a little over 2 miles from the Merrimack River out to where I live on Somerville and Mammoth. It runs underground, obviously, but what it's going to do is it's going to be a massive, I think it's a 12 feet by 18 foot tall pipe that is going to allow for us to carry much more water so that there's not that backflow up onto our roads and into our homes. Now, there's a cost associated with this. So when the government required us to do this, when we entered into the consent decree, and let me be clear on this point, this is an unfunded federal mandate. The federal government is telling us that we need to do this because of the environmental hazards that are associated with this. But there are no dollars attached to this project from the federal government. This has to be paid for by user fees in the city. Anybody read the Union Leader the other day? Yeah, so sewer rates are going up as a result of this.
Keep going.
Yeah, sewer rates will go up as a result of this project. In the 4 years since the consent decree was signed by the city of Manchester, I can assure you that the Department of Public Works and all of our relevant tangential related departments worked as hard as they possibly could to go after congressionally directed spending, euphemism now for earmarks, with the federal government. They looked for every grant opportunity from the federal government. They looked for every grant from the state to try and offset all of the costs that were associated with this project.
Thank you. The next question might sound a little unusual, but again, it comes from my residents.
Sure.
How do you see parking availability for seniors downtown? Many of us don't feel particularly safe in the parking ramps, particularly at night. Any comment?
Yeah, so we have our parking director, actually I was just on the phone with him today. He provides me with regular updates on the parking garages that we have in the city. He has made tremendous strides. He's made awful lot of differences in our parking garages about when the doors are allowed to be open. He has regular patrols through that area. He's a former Manchester Police Department police officer. So he's got safety and security at prime. In addition to that, also the cleanliness of the garages as well, because broken windows theory, if the garages are left in disrepair, it invites a bad element. But so we've done a great deal of work, and Chris Goodnow, our parking director, deserves the credit for this, but done a great deal of work at trying to improve the safety in those areas. As it pertains to anything that's like mobility related, if there are concerns there, I'm more than happy to talk to Chris about that as well. Parking in the downtown area, though, that is something that I want to have on my long-term plan of things that we have to address, whether it's looking at other, like partnering with Southern Hampshire University with the garage that they have, whether it is more transportation-related entities in the downtown, more bus routes, things of that nature. We have to find a way to make it easier to be in the downtown area and park.
Okay.
Or to get around in the downtown area.
Next question. Does the city of Manchester have a snow removal policy for sidewalks? What is the policy? How is it enforced? And more especially, who's responsible?
Department of Public Works. So it's a little bit different everywhere in the city. So like in the downtown area, the Street Plus team that we brought on, the ambassadors that we brought on in the summer months, they're going to do a lot of our sidewalk cleaning in the downtown area when it snows. But as it pertains to the balance of the city, that's going to be determined on by your area. So Department of Public Works is the one that oversees that, and then from like a parking standpoint, that's what's going to change depending on the area that you're in, when you can be on the right, when you can be on the left, snow emergencies. But we put out all of that information on our website, through our social media channels. We always send out press releases so that MUR picks it up, or wherever you get your news, whether it's the Union Leader, WMUR, the Ink Link, anything like that, we send out our press releases to make sure that we get that information out there.
I think that question comes from the fact that many of us are walkers,
Right.
and the sidewalks up and down Countryside Boulevard aren't always clear.
Ah, okay. Can you make a note of that?
Okay. So catch your breath, and I'm going to take just a minute. I'm going to take a grandmother's privilege. I would like you to know that the chief of staff for our mayor is my grandson, Daley. That's him in the back of the room. Hi, Daley. And
Now he's as red as this gentleman's shirt right over here.
it's a grandmother's privilege, right? I want you to know that I sent out a questionnaire to 2 or 3 weeks ago, asking for questions for your visit today, and I had 35.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, so
I love the voter engagement.
that's why I have them all written down. I mean, you're not going to get 35, but so just so you know.
Okay.
Okay. Our political landscape is not especially on strong footing these days. As a highly visible politician, do you feel safe? As mayor, have you ever been threatened? Talk a bit about your ride along with members of the Manchester Police Department.
So I'll take the last one first. Manchester Police Department is filled with heroes, full stop. They have an extraordinarily difficult job. For the last few years, they've hovered around 20 vacancies within the department. So that puts an added stress on our police officers to be able to do their job with fewer people in that component. Creates longer hours, creates greater requirements for them. Bail reform at the state level doesn't help, but I'm happy to talk about that as well. But the Manchester Police Department does a phenomenal job, and we've seen the results in that. Crime has continued to drop in the city of Manchester. When I talked to them about creating this additional foot patrol for hotspots in the downtown and around the city, they didn't put up any roadblocks at all. It wasn't like, hey sir, we can't do this, we're stretched too thin. It was, all right, let's Charlie Mike, let's figure out how to get this done. They are incredible. As to my own personal safety, no, I don't feel unsafe at all.
Have you been threatened at all?
Verbally or physically?
Oh, you may answer that.
No, I mean, no, I mean, I've never been physically assaulted or anything like that. I think from a verbal standpoint, I mean, at the Board of Mayor and all human beings, when you're watching the public comment period, somebody asked me one time, during the public comment period, anybody can come up and anybody can say whatever they want. And it's not an environment, it's actually the antithesis of this environment right now where I'm talking to you. They talk to me and I can't say anything. So I just gotta stand there. So they can say whatever they want and I can't respond. And I mean, I guess I could, but I choose not to. I can't roll my eyes or I can't sigh or anything like that. Not that I would ever do it, but even those interactions, when people ask me, how do you do that? How do you stand up there and take it there have been nights where we've done 2 hours, 3 hours, of public comment. And I just say, look, to that person sitting in the well in the chamber, this is their opportunity to address their elected officials. And to them, regardless of what you think about the issue, to them, that is the most important thing in their lives at that moment. And the very least that I could do is be respectful, hear them out, and if it's something that I can help address, I flag it with Daley during the meeting, and he goes out and he grabs them and talks to them about how we can be helpful.
I don't know if all of you are aware of this or not, but when he meets with the Board of Aldermen, it's 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans, and he's the tiebreaker. So his job is not easy when he's with those people.
So the thing that I would add to that, so you would think, right, and these are highly politicized times, right? It feels like nobody can agree on anything. You would think that with an evenly split board, 7 over here, 7 over here, that I'd be breaking ties every single night, right? It rarely happens. In my 1 year that I've been in this office, 12 and a half months roughly now, I think I've broken 5 ties in that entire time frame. I think for all the noise that happens sometimes, we've gotten an awful lot done because we've been able to forge compromise, and I'm deeply proud of that. There are some things that you're just not going to be able to agree on, and that's fine, that's healthy, but by and large, we find ways to communicate and get things done.
Thank you. Are you in favor of fewer or more EV vehicles in the city fleet?
Oh, so I had this conversation during the budget period last year, and this piece of the conversation with Central Fleet came up, and I was asking, where are we with EVs? Is this something that is cost prohibitive? What is the overall, this was when I was in office for 3 months, so I wanted to get a feel for how the department had been approaching this previously. And the conversations that we had was, the technology is not there yet. But at some point, it's going to become cheaper, more cost-effective, more efficient to do this. At which point, we can look to start phasing out the vehicles that we have to make it more EV. But remember, too, that that's going to create an infrastructure upgrade that we're going to need to do as well. Because right now, all of our pipes or all of our stations do what? Gas, right? So now we're going to have to get I'm sure there are federal credits available through the Build Back Better plan or through other things through Department of Energy or Department of Transportation, one of the two. But at this point, we will continue to monitor that, and when it is cost effective for the city, we may move in that direction. To me, the bottom line is the biggest thing that we have to look at.
Right on time.
I'm getting better at landing that plane.
Okay. Drug sales are not hard to see on the streets in downtown Manchester. I personally have seen such exchanges on several occasions as I drive through the downtown area. How are you addressing this problem?
Yeah, so two things. One, that downtown patrol that I was talking about, those 130 arrests, we're not arresting homeless people for being homeless. So let me dispel with that rumor, if anybody had heard that before, that we're not criminalizing homelessness. But that downtown hotspot patrol, the vast majority of those arrests have been drug related. So going into the parks and identifying individuals who are either engaging in drugs or using drugs or selling drugs. So with the police department does an incredible job at being on the spot when things are going on like that in the city. The second piece of this is bail reform. So when the state changed the bail laws in 2018, it created what I would argue is a problem for our local communities. So let me give you a couple quick statistics. So in 2024, the Manchester, don't hold me to these exactly, but roughly the Manchester Police Department conducted 4,700 arrests in the city. Of those 4,600 arrests, over, I think 37% of those individuals were released immediately back into the streets. Of those 37, 24% of them were on bail at the time of their arrest. So that means they're getting arrested, released, rearrested, released, and it creates this horrific cycle. And the majority of those individuals who are cycling through this arrest and release are for quality of life crimes, like selling drugs. So last year, the state of New Hampshire, the legislature in New Hampshire and the governor signed a bill to address bail reform. But they looked at the 13 felonies, the baker's dozen felonies. So things like murder, you don't get released on, and a bunch of other horrific crimes. That's important. I supported that. I applaud the legislature for making that progress. But I said, do not let that be the last bite at the apple. Because what we really need to go after is those quality of life, misdemeanor, repeat violent offenders. That would make a massive difference overnight in the city of Manchester.
Thank you. Does Manchester have someone responsible for overseeing federal grants of any kind?
Boy, that is a great question. So, not at present. The city of Manchester is, well, unfortunately unique in this way from other mid-sized cities. Most mid-sized cities have a grant coordinator on staff to do this kind of work. Having worked for the federal government and having worked for a nonprofit that primarily lived off of grants, grant coordinators can be massively important, especially because of the grants that are available at the federal level. City of Manchester has never had that before. So through, everybody familiar with ARPA, all that money that came out after the pandemic? So through the ARPA funds that the city of Manchester had, in November, when we obligated the last batch of $1.7 million that we had in ARPA, we put money in there specifically to hire a grant coordinator. So I just had conversations with our HR director. We're looking to bring on a grant coordinator in February to start doing this kind of work to bring in grants to the city. So this can help in a number of ways. This is going to allow us to work with our community partners. So on mental health, on addiction, on homelessness, if we can go after, because the city of Manchester doesn't provide a lot of services. We are the ones that partner with our local entities that are doing this work, Families in Transition, Waypoint, MPAL, Boys and Girls Club, things like that. But if we can be the entity that helps them go after these grants, but also within our departments, like with all the money from Build Back Better for transportation, through HHS, there's a lot of money out there that we are leaving on the table because we don't have anybody going after that. That can help reduce the amount of money we have to spend at the city level if we have a grant that can help subsidize that. Just a whole lot of good can come of that. And finally, we're going to be bringing this person on.
Great. In Manchester, how much of the city budget is funded in part or in whole by federal dollars and federal programs?
Not much. I mean, through the police department, there are several grants, but they're more nominal. Through the fire department, there are several grants. They're smaller. DPW, same kind of thing. Health department runs almost exclusively on grants, which is a major challenge for that department long term. But there's not, I mean, with the exception of ARPA, there's not a lot of federal dollars that are flowing through the city of Manchester.
Okay.
We did just get a $2.3 million Smart Street grant for the DPW, which is going to be incredible for that Cedar Street, Beach Street area and helping the traffic flow there.
Good. Challenges to the Manchester City School improvement projects are in the news often weekly, sometimes daily.
Did Scott put you up to this one?
No, he doesn't. He's not seen this question. We know that every delay raises costs. What's causing the delays in the building projects?
Yeah, so I don't. So for background's sake, in 2023, at the end of 2023, in that December time period, the Board of School Committee and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved a bond for $290 million for priority one of the facilities plan for the Manchester School District. So about $199 million of that $290 million bond was supposed to, or is going to the renovation of 4 middle schools. That money is about to be, I mean, those 4 projects, those 4 renovations have continued on. They're going to begin work and break ground on that in the spring. So that there has never been a hold placed on any of that. The one part that there was a hold placed on was on the construction of a new Beach Street school, which cost roughly $81.5 million. So the Board of Mayor and Aldermen had a number of additional questions that they wanted addressed. So we did not support when that came up. So where there's the Beach Street school right now, they want the new school to go across the street. Where across the street there is currently a park, that park would go on to where the existing Beach Street school is. So what we voted on that night was to allow for them to build the school on that new area, on that park area, and allow for a park to be built where that school is. We did not support it at that time because there were more questions that we wanted answered. My argument at the time was this is a $290 million project. This part specifically is $81.5 million. I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that if there are questions that are still outstanding, we want to get them answered. So I've done exactly what I said I was going to do. I've been working with the superintendent, I've been working with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to identify those questions, get them answered, get them out to the board, make sure that everything is copacetic, and then it can be brought back up.
Thank you. I'm going to skip down, Alan, to another question, and time is for 6 minutes on this. I'd like to start out the question. He's not timing me, just you. I want to start out with some information for all of you, and then I would like the mayor to respond accordingly. There has been over the past, I don't know, 3 years since I've been here, questions off and on about the Metro Transit system and people asking whether or not it would be possible to bring a city bus here. There's been a lot of information dispersed depending on who's been talking to whom. And actually, thanks to the mayor and to Steve Kesselring, who, by the way, was here and won his State House seat, I was put in touch with
Mike Whitten.
The MTA.
Mike Whitten.
Mike Whitten, thank you, the MTA director. After he and I talked, and he gave me a lot of terrific information, I had a couple or 3 exchanges with April, including one yesterday. Let me tell you what I know, and then I would like you to respond if you would, please. There are possibilities, underline that word, possibilities, of bringing a bus onto our campus. Right now, as most of you know, it only goes to the Cedar Swamp, and we're 0.7 miles further up the street, or the road, or the boulevard, whatever word you want to use. Well, as it turns out, the bus system uses federal funds, and everybody in this room knows as soon as you take money from the feds, things change, and the rules change. And so what Mike Whitten told me was that there might be a possibility, but that the first thing we would have to do, because federal monies are involved, is to have a pilot study. Now, you all know I'm an academic. I know all about pilot studies, and they don't happen in 5 minutes. And what Mike told me was that this process might take 6 months or so. He said that he would have to gain permission to bring a bus onto this property because it's private property. I've spoke with April about this. She thinks it's absolutely possible. And the other thing Mike suggested was actually to consider coming up here with a bus a couple of times a week, maybe one day in the morning and maybe another day in the afternoon. And this is just sheer conjecture because we don't have any data yet. So I asked April if she would give me permission to develop a questionnaire to send out to all of you to find out basically if anybody's really interested in this. Because we don't know. We have no data, no statistics. We have no idea how many of you would use this service at all. So the only involvement I have in the whole process as chair of civics and voter information is that I'll send out the questionnaire. I'll do the legwork. I'll put all the information together and I'll share it with Mike Whitten and of course with April. So we have no idea where this is going. All I want you to understand as residents here is it's a distinct possibility it might work on occasion. All that being said, Mayor, would you comment?
Yeah, so this was one of the things that I actually talked about because Representative Kesserling had reached out to me on this and I immediately put him in touch with Mike Whitten because I remember getting this question the last time around. So similar to the question that we had earlier, Mike Whitten and I are about to sit down on the budget process and what I would love to talk to him about is let's draft that list of questions, let's get some data behind it, then we can go and work with our grant coordinator to talk to the feds and see if there is something available for it from a funding standpoint. This is also, I have great relationships with Congressman Pappas and both of our senators, and we've been more than happy to work with them as well. I used to do transportation work when I worked for the congressman 10 years ago. So I know that world a little bit, but I mean, I'm more than happy to look into it. I love the concept. If we did something like, let's start, it doesn't have to be 7 days a week, every hour on the hour, right? But if we started with, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, or Wednesday nights, Friday nights to get down to the Palace Theater for a show or something, or a show and a dinner, right? Something along those lines. I would love to look into something like that.
Well, I will keep you posted as I get
Please
information.
do. Sounds like you're more in the know than I am.
Oh,
My own city
that's not
department.
true. Now that you've been mayor for a year, how do you see the issue of immigration affecting Manchester?
Yeah, so the example that I always give is my great-great Meme and Pepe came to the city of Manchester in 1897 to work in the mill yard. To do what, right? They were working in the mills. I think it was a shoe factory that they worked in. And they helped to build this city. And now 130 years later, people like my wife are coming into this city to work, right? And raise a family. And I think that Manchester has always been an open, welcoming society. I think that it brings a lot to our city. Now, what I would also say to that is we have to make sure that people are doing it legally. I don't believe that Manchester should be, and we are not a sanctuary city. So if somebody is found to be here illegally, we will work with the federal government to address that issue as it comes up. I do think that we have historically always been a welcoming and opening city. That shouldn't change, but I think that legal aspect to it is extraordinarily important as well.
You've been wonderful answering our questions and staying on time.
Hey.
The last question I have, I would really like you to wrap into just general comments. You have time to talk to the residents from your perspective, not from ours. And the one thing I'd like you to include in your comments is how you can see the residents of RiverWoods helping the city. There's a lot we obviously can't do, but there must be some things we can do. So just talk to us, and you won't hear the bell.
Deadly open-ended conversation, huh? I think civic engagement is one of the most important things that there is. For a healthy city, for a healthy community, for a healthy population, people have got to be involved. So what I would say is get involved to the extent that you can, whether that's watching a Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting at a simple thing, right? So turning on the TV on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock, watching. finding things that you care about, calling our office if you have an idea or a suggestion, writing a letter to the editor, writing an op-ed, getting in touch with your alderman. Kelly Thomas is amazing, your alderwoman from this ward. She's great. And you have Carlos Gonzalez on the school board. If there are things that you care about, contact us and tell us. So I always say that I think that listening or leadership is one of the most important parts. Listening is one of the most important parts of leadership and one of the things that is least often done. So like when I do my town hall meetings, and I've done 12, so 12 wards, 12 months in a year. I do one town hall a month. So I did that all last year, and Tuesday I'm doing my first town hall up in Ward 1. We're starting the cycle all over again. But when we did the zoning rewrite, we did another 12 town halls specifically just around zoning in the city. And then I come here, and then I've done the Cashin Center once a quarter or once every other month. I'll go to the Cashin Center and just do coffee. That's me. I go in, I say, I'll give 5 minutes on an overview of what's going on at the city, and then I just answer questions for an hour. And it's great. I love it. I love the interaction. But that doesn't happen if there's nobody in the room, right? So get involved, get engaged, call the office, watch the meetings, call your alderman, and stay engaged.
Okay. Would you be willing to let me ask a few more random questions from our residents?
Absolutely.
Okay, who has a random question for something that we have not covered this afternoon?
This is unfiltered. Here we go.
Okay, yes it is. Sam, here's
Light
the
me up.
microphone before you speak.
I don't think I need it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciated your comments on the veterans. Something just happened recently that may affect some of us in this room and certainly a lot of people in the city. The sale of CMC to whomever, the hospital. What are your thoughts on this, and should we be ready for hits on the pocketbook?
So I was in favor of this merger. So in my conversations with HCA and CMC, they really opened up the books. They were losing millions of dollars every single year. How it's been presented to the public and to me, and I've seen the numbers, so it's accurate. CMC was going out of business. I couldn't think of a more damning thing for the west side of the city of Manchester, or for the city as a whole, because then everybody would go over to Elliott, and that's not sustainable. Can't think of anything more damaging, or a few things more damaging to the city than losing healthcare on the west side. So just starting with that basic proposition that CMC can't and shouldn't close. Right? So they went through a really laborious, labor-intensive process with the Attorney General's office, excuse me, to make sure that contract was going to protect the city of Manchester. So all the details that I've seen is that the city of Manchester will be protected, that CMC is going to continue as it has. But now there's going to be millions of dollars worth of investments into CMC from an infrastructure standpoint to upgrade that. We're not losing the 2,500 employees that were working there either, because they had to do cutbacks on their employees because they were running out of money. And there was that concern that if that shuts down, where do those 2,500 people go? So I was happy that they finally got the merger taken care of. It looks like they're going to close at the end of the month. And then I saw the Attorney General yesterday when I was up in Concord for the inauguration of the governor. And he said, look, this isn't the last we're going to hear about this. We're going to stay on top of this. And if the contract guidelines, requirements are not being met, then we're going to be on top of that. And we're not going to let that occur.
Thank you.
One of our residents just stopped me and showed me something on her phone that just came out from Zillow, naming New Hampshire the #1 choice place to live in the country right now. We don't
Manchester specifically.
Yeah, and we don't have any housing.
Yeah, so this is one of the challenges that I talk about. So Manchester, New Hampshire is rated by Zillow, and then there's one other one I can't remember off the top of my head, but Zillow and one other entity named Manchester, New Hampshire the #1 hottest housing market in the United States of America. Wow. That is great from one respect because it means we're doing a good job. People want to live here. We have an art scene. We have a sports scene. We have great restaurants and bars. We're doing the right things. The challenge, though, is when you have a limited supply, right? I never got past Economics 101, but I got supply and demand. We have a very limited supply, 0.6% vacancy rate in the city. A healthy vacancy rate is about 6%, so we have 1/100th the amount of housing that we need. Low supply, high demand, costs do what? They go through the roof, right? So that's why we've been so diligent at trying to bring more housing into the city. If anybody read in the Union Leader, my year-end wrap-up with the Union Leader with Paul Feely, I listed out all the housing updates from this year. I think there are 707 new housing units that are in construction. We issued 543 certificates of occupancy. And then approved through the planning board, zoning board, another 600 dwelling units in the city of Manchester. And then we have our zoning rewrite coming on that we're going to be bringing back draft 2 of the zoning rewrite in that Q1, Q2 timeframe. Hopefully we get it passed by the fall area or fall timeframe. But that will also set us up for the next 20 years to bring even more housing into the city of Manchester. This is also not just a Manchester issue, though. This is a state of New Hampshire thing. If we're 60,000 units shy of where we need to be in the state of New Hampshire, Manchester doesn't have room for 60,000 units, right? So the state of New Hampshire has to help out with this as well, which is why I was really encouraged that Governor Ayotte, now I don't have to say Governor-elect, Governor Ayotte yesterday in her inaugural address talked about the importance of housing, talked about the importance of streamlining the bureaucracy up in Concord so that they don't have to wait 6 years to get something done, that 60 days you get your permit, you can start building.
Is there a question on this side of the room? Oh, my.
I'm feeling lopsided.
You've answered everything.
I punched him out?
Oh, okay, and I'm coming to you. As fast as my little feet can get here.
Okay, so I'm thrilled that you have, that the police department has 2 horses that you send out for PR events. And I'm wondering if there's anything, if you need help with them. I wish we could see them grazing out in that beautiful pasture around the YDC, but maybe that's not possible.
We're going to make a note of it right now. So we had what the heck was the name? What was the name of the miniature pony? Do you remember?
He came here.
Oh, so you've seen it, yeah. Do you want to see? You want the horses to come up here?
Been here
Oh, when was the last time?
last year.
Oh, okay. All right. So they have. Oh, I thought I was going to do something great. I thought if I can get one thing done, maybe not the MTA, but if I can get the horses up here. No, I'm more than happy. The men and women who work in that unit specifically are incredible. I'm more than happy to tell them that I went to the RiverWoods and we have a volunteer.
We have a lot of new people here, so they haven't seen.
Yes, that's true. Okay. All right. We'll make a note of that.
Mayor, we have one more question here.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. Excellent. The one thing that I wanted to tag along with Sam's issue about HCA taking over CMC, many of the doctors from CMC have left and gone to Elliott, they've gone to Nashua, they've gone to Concord. However, the way the AG's report came out, it sounded as though the Elliott, or maybe even Concord and Nashua, went to seek those physicians, nurses, whatever, to come to the Elliott. And that it was implied, it wasn't stated directly. And I just want people in this room to know that the Elliott, of which I'm a part, did not do that.
Okay.
Those people came to the different hospitals and said, do you have room for me? I'm leaving CMC.
Okay. I appreciate the knowledge. I gotta run.
Okay.
I got one more
Well,
meeting to go to.
Before you go out the door.
Yeah.
First of all, can we all say a big thank you?
Yeah. I appreciate it. I always love coming up here, so I'll make sure that I come up here again before the end of the year.
Please, we would love it. And I personally want to thank you for coming, for being so gracious, and for answering a lot of questions that you didn't see in the video.
That is true. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great to see you all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.